All right, so welcome to D20 Woodworking, and this is probably going to be my favorite. I've done thousands of YouTube videos. This might be my favorite because Caleb, I don't know if you really watch my videos, but I talk about you a ton because you are my favorite designer of pretty much all time. So this is like I've done tens of thousands of interviews in my life, and I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
So first, we're going to be talking a lot about Marvel Champions. That's what a lot of people want to hear. But I also want to talk a bit about Star Wars Deck Builder because my wife loves that game and she'd be mad at
Awesome.
me if we didn't talk about that. So first, if you don't mind, Caleb, just talk a little bit about yourself, just in case people don't know who you are. Just a little bit of your history of designing and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Caleb Grace. I work for Fantasy Flight Games. I'm a senior game designer. I've actually been with the studio for 14 years now, which is crazy to say out loud. It has flown by. It's been a great ride. I'm excited for 14 more, Lord willing. I've had the good fortune to work on the Lord of the Rings, the card game, which I came to as a fan both of the game and the IP. And then transitioned from that to Marvel Champions, which I understand you talk a lot about on your show. That was really cool because that was the first time I was involved at the very beginning
Mhm.
of the game design, where it was me and Nate French and Michael Boggs, cooking up what became, Marvel Champions, the card game. And more recently, I have stepped away from Marvel Champions, and now I work full time on Star Wars: The Deck Building Game,
Mhm.
which is my first ever solo design that I designed just by myself. It's not a solo game; it's a competitive 1v1 deck builder.
Mhm.
So a little break from all the living cooperative card games that I worked on for about 13 years.
Is it a little scary to kind of step away and do your own thing? Because before, like you said, you had Nate French and Michael Boggs and
Mhm.
whatnot. Is it a little like, oh, now it's just up to me? If something goes wrong, I can't blame them, you know?
Sure. Yeah, definitely working with Nate and Michael was a huge advantage because they're both brilliant.
Mhm.
I mean, I mean that. I wouldn't say to their faces, because raging egos. No, I'm kidding. They're super cool, and they are brilliant. And so it was nice to be able to collaborate and know that if I missed something, they'd pick it up. Like I've given Michael all the credit for the double-sided identity cards, the
Mm,
hero alter ego thing. That was something where Nate felt we're just missing something,
mm.
and he threw that out there, and it was like that's so obvious, and yet we didn't think of it for all that time. And so yeah, it's great to have someone there to come up with great ideas like that. So I could see it being intimidating to say, Caleb, we want you to make a Star Wars deck building game, and you're gonna have to do it all on your own. But that's not how it went.
Okay.
It was actually a passion project for me, where Nate and I we used to go out to lunch when he was executive game designer, and I would tell him, we should really do a Star Wars deck building game because deck building games are real popular,
Yeah.
and it seems like every intellectual property has one except for Star Wars somehow. Like one of the biggest ones out
Yeah.
there, and they don't have a deck building game. And here we've been working with Lucasfilm for like a decade. We have a great work relationship with them. We also have a huge backlog of amazing artwork.
Mm,
I was like, these are all reasons that we should just do it.
yeah.
And so he said, well, would you like to come up with a prototype? I said, absolutely. So because of the way it came to it, it wasn't intimidating at all. It was more just exciting, like a chance for me to just flex my creative muscles and see what I could come up with. I remember going around the office and like asking people, when you hear Star Wars deck builder, like what do you think of? And just taking
Mm,
notes, of like things they want to see, right? Like spaceships and lightsabers
yeah.
and the force, stuff like that. Um, so no, that was not intimidating. It was energizing. It was a nice change of pace. I
Mhm.
actually had he gave me a week. He said, we're gonna do this. He had this program that he instituted called the design sprint, where it
Okay.
was like you work it out with your manager and they clear your schedule to give you 1 week to come up with what we call proof of concept.
Okay.
It's not like a fully playable prototype necessarily, but it's enough to get a feel for it.
Mhm.
He's like, so you'll take a week. By Friday, we'll be playing it. We were playing it on Wednesday. I
Oh,
mean, I
wow.
was just like ready to go. It coalesced so quickly,
Yeah.
and he was really positive, and he said, I think you should keep plugging away at this. And so, over the course of a couple of years, it turned into a real game.
Is that something you kind of just do in the background then, like your time off or whatever, or when you are, things are a little slower, you just like, okay, let me work on this
Yeah.
little section. Okay.
Yeah, things were never really slower on Marvel Champions. That was it was a very busy schedule. But where I'm actually sitting right now, this is my home office,
Okay.
and you know, through that door, you know, my kids have the room across the hall, and so you know, being a parent and putting your kids to bed, you understand it can be a challenge sometimes. You know, they don't
Mhm.
always want to go to sleep when it's time.
Yeah.
And so it kind of became a nighttime routine where I would tuck them in and then come sit down here, kind of leave the door cracked open, you know, just listening for them. And I'd be like, well, hey, as long as I'm here, I might as well just, you know, noodle on this Star Wars deck building game idea that I have.
Mm,
So yeah, it was a lot of it was done kind of in my spare time and in the evening, and with no promise that it was going to go anywhere. It was just
right.
something that I really wanted to try, and I was having a lot of fun, and it's really worked out since.
That's awesome. So
Yeah, thank you.
you mentioned in the beginning, with the alter ego and hero thing.
Hmm.
I don't know what you can say, not, but like, if was it originally just gonna be like a hero card out there and that's
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the pitch that we initially were coming up with was, you know, we want to be that hero, right?
Yeah.
We want to embody that character, feel like Spider-Man swinging through the city and saving the
Mhm.
day. Um, and it was, as I mentioned in brief, like it was sort of Nate who, toward the end of our initial design stretch, was saying, "Look, I like what we have,
Mhm.
but I feel like something's missing."
Okay.
And that really caught me off guard because I thought everything we had was great, and I got a little nervous, you know, because I've seen games just get blown up at the last minute. So
Okay.
I think I was a little, like, protective in that moment. So I wasn't feeling especially creative in response to that. I was feeling maybe, you know, a little more human, a little more defensive of, like, this thing that we'd made. And I think Boggs was just feeling a little more free, you
Mhm.
know, and really just responded to what Nate was saying without any defensiveness, but just a real professional creativity of like, well, what about this? You
Yeah.
know? And so really hats off to him and Nate for recognizing the need for that game. Because at this point in retrospect, it's like hard to imagine Marvel Champions without a
Yeah.
double-sided that, like, that's for me, that's the cornerstone, right? That everything else, you know, leans on.
Mhm.
Without that piece, I just don't think the game would be as popular as it is.
No, yeah, yeah, it was definitely brilliant, and it's, for especially solo gamers like me, it's like really hard to, time that and when we're gonna do it and whatever. So, I mean, it was
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic. Talking a bit about the hero design, if you don't mind talking a bit about what does the process look like for the hero? Do you start with, okay, we start with, let's just say Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Um, and then you think about the theme of Spider-Man and then make the cards to it, or is there mechanical, like, hey, we kind of need Spider-Man to be able to do XYZ thing,
Mhm.
let's make it thematic off of that, like chicken and egg kind of thing, which comes
Right.
first?
It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but it's
Okay.
probably more of column A as far as the first 5 heroes that we chose for the core. We spent a good amount of time putting our heads together and coming up with that list that we then pitched to Marvel, and Marvel said, "That's a great list. Go ahead."
Okay.
So once we knew that these were the 5 heroes we wanted in the core, we started with, you know, who is this hero? What are their powers? What are their personalities? What sets them apart and makes them popular? Really try to capture the zeitgeist of that character.
Hmm.
Then there's a little bit of column B where it's like, okay, but they can't all be the same
Right.
functionally. They need to each have a different hook.
Yeah.
So like some of them are easy, like Iron Man was easy. Like Nate really wanted to build the suit, you know, and it was such a fun hook. Everybody loved it. Everyone who ever played Iron Man immediately went, "Oh, this is cool. I'm building the suit and I'm getting stronger and now I can fly and do all this stuff." And Spider-Man was always going to be a little bit more flexible,
Hmm.
a little more jack of all trades because that's kind of part of his character. He can kind of do a little bit of everything. In the comics, he's a genius. He's super strong. He's nimble, quick-witted, all of that, right? So we definitely start with who the character is, and we let that define it. And then once we've kind of got a good picture of who that character is and the things we want to bring to the table, then it's sort of checking it against, all right, but what other heroes are already in the game, and
Yeah.
how is this one different from that one? So that that becomes more challenging the deeper the card pool gets, you know. So like
Yeah.
by the time we get to like Shadowcat and her thing is form changing and becoming intangible, it's like, well, we already have a form changing hero who can become intangible. So how is Shadowcat different from Vision,
Hmm.
right? How is Hulk different from She-Hulk? You know, how are all the Winter Soldier different from Captain America? All these characters who are basically different versions of each other, you know,
Hmm.
trying to find a hook for each one.
So kind of with your now balancing, I mean, that's what it sounds like, right? So you're balancing all this out and you're trying to make him feel true and respectful to himself. Were there ever like real challenges with that? Were there ever like, I don't want to say issues, but just like, hey, we have this great idea. And then like you said, okay, we have Shadowcat and oh no, this is seeming a lot similar to some other people. Like
Mhm.
how do you go back and like, approach that?
One of the biggest challenges is my bad memory. I'll like design a card and be like, guys, I got this great idea. And they'll be like, you already made that card. like,
Still brilliant,
like
but
if it's great once, it's great every time. Um, yeah, no, I joke about that because it's mostly that wasn't the issue. Like there are challenges though, for sure, of just, yeah, saying how do we make each hero feel fresh and new
Mhm.
and worthy at the end of the day, worthy of your money,
Yeah.
right? Like, why, if I already am so happy playing Captain America, why am I going to go out and buy Winter Soldier versus just playing Captain America again?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm actually really proud of that. And maybe one of the things I'm most proud of with the game is how I feel like we've managed to make every hero
Yeah.
feel different and unique. And that's not just my opinion. That's maybe one of the biggest pieces of feedback we consistently get from
Mhm.
the community. So there's a lot of thought and effort that goes in that. It starts with a vision meeting where everybody involved in the next set will put our heads together and first of all we'll choose the roster and then we'll come up with the hook for each one and then we'll kind of compare and contrast to make sure each one's different enough.
Mhm.
And then that process will continue throughout playtesting as we get
Okay.
playtester feedback and more eyes on it. So like maybe to us it seems a very clear distinction, but maybe our playtesters are saying, I really don't see the difference. This feels too much like that. So then we have to kind of go back and reevaluate.
Mhm. So when you say selecting the roster, do you all kind of come up with a rough idea like, okay, we would like to do X-Men, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And
Hmm.
then you pitch it to Marvel and then they say like yay or nay
Hmm.
or is that kind of
There's
okay.
a step in between where
Oh,
first
okay.
we pitch it to the studio.
Okay.
So as like the Marvel team,
Mhm.
we'll put our heads together and say, you know, here's what we'd like to do next. And that's the vision step where we then write the vision document, which first goes to the leadership team
Mhm.
at FFG, and then they'll review it and give notes. And there's either approved or you know, not approved, or there's like conditionally approved, where it's like we like it, we want to move forward, but with these changes. And
Okay.
that's probably the most common result. It's it's usually, you know, most things are conditionally approved and it's not because they're like looking at us like side eye like, "Mm, are you sure?" It's usually just more of, hey, we like all this, please just consider these things that maybe you hadn't considered yet,
Mhm.
you know. So from there the vision doc actually gets then updated and sort of tailored for Disney Marvel. Then we
Mhm.
send it off to them so that they can approve or not approve or conditionally approve. You know, it's just gotta, you go through it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Usually by the time we send it off, though, we're just working. We just start sort of on the assumption that they will approve because they have a certain amount of time
Okay.
to. I believe it's something like a month that they
Okay.
can take to get back to us, and we basically can't afford to be sitting still during that time.
Yeah.
So we'll get going, and occasionally we'll find out, hey, that thing you've been working on, that probably will have to change to some extent. But for the most part, I feel like we understand each other pretty well. So I could probably count on one hand the number of times that something came back and they're like, no, you can't do that. You know.
That's fair.
And to be
Yeah.
honest, I'm going to tell you honestly right now, I can't remember what those were. You know, this is that seldom, and my memory's that bad.
Yeah. All right, so talking about difficulty in the game, because one of the things I think has been really interesting is, every single scenario generally starts with the standard cards, and over time, you're now involved in the standard two, standard three, we have heroic two, we have all these different things. What was kind of the balancing process with that? Was it difficult? Was it hard? Were you like, hey, we want to make this really hard because the community is
Mhm.
saying this is too easy, or we want to make it a bit easier because they said this is too hard? Kind of, how much feedback was there and how much balancing did you all have to do with that?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges of getting the game off the ground initially is that there wasn't hardly any feedback because it was
Mhm.
all internal, right? So we did, hire play testers, but they were at that point, there was no experience with Marvel Champions. It's a brand new game. So they're coming to us from Arkham Horror or Lord of the
Okay.
Rings, or they're coming from Game of Thrones, competitive LCG or Netrunner,
Mhm.
and so they're bringing different expectations and different insights, and depending on who you were hearing from, they all wanted kind of different things from the game,
Yeah.
and that's where that vision document is so important because once you agree as a team that this is the game you want to make, you have to defend that vision because
Mm.
everybody will try to pull the game, a little bit to one way or the other. Um, so yeah, the feedback it was difficult at first because the game wasn't very well established yet,
Mhm.
right? Now I'm afraid once I get going, I halfway lost your question. So if you want to just get me back on track here, what was the question I was
No,
answering?
no. So then you get to like, okay, so the game's more established now, and now you're hearing
Hmm.
from the community like, oh, let's just say
Oh,
Rise of Red
about
Skull is too
difficulty.
easy. Yeah, like, and
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to go
yeah.
harder and easier.
Yeah, no, definitely there was some of that, right? Like Rise
Mm.
of Red Skull came out and people were like, "Hey, I really like it, but man, really that last boss felt too easy.
Mhm.
It was kind of a letdown." And you're thinking as a designer, you're like, "Well, that's not the feedback I'm hoping for. Like, I really want you to, enjoy and have a cinematic, climactic finish to the campaign." Um, so there's kind of two things you can do with that. And this is, I think, maybe one of the hardest things to learn as a designer because most of us didn't go to school for this.
Right.
Most of us didn't come to the studio with a lot of previous game design experience. So there's a natural tendency to just go, whatever feedback I'm getting, that's what I'm listening to because it's the only feedback I'm getting. But with experience, you start to realize that the people who are providing that feedback don't necessarily represent the bulk of your audience.
Mhm.
And I think of all of our LCGs, that's probably most true with Marvel Champions because we made Marvel Champions to appeal to the broadest audience possible.
Mhm.
Whereas both Lord of the Rings and Arkham are fantastic games and very popular. And like Arkham itself, like rivals Champions for sales. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not kidding when I say like it's very popular. But they definitely attract like a more hardcore niche of players. People want a real challenge who really want to sink their teeth into more complicated deck building and,
Yeah.
and scenarios. So with champions, you'll get this feedback on like Board Game Geek or Reddit or wherever people are saying the game's too easy, and the natural tendency is to go, well, let's make it harder.
Yeah.
But then you have to check yourself and realize that we made a game that's kind of at its heart. It's like for parents to play with their kids,
Mhm.
you know? And those parents playing with their kids are probably just playing at the kitchen table somewhere, not necessarily going to a game store, not necessarily going online, because they're getting the experience that they want right at home.
Mhm.
And it took us years to really like prove that this was true. It wasn't until we finally got like a product line manager assigned to the game and they started running the numbers and like looking at the foot traffic, on these websites versus the number of sales. And they're finally like, hey, just want you to know, like, the amount of people online represents like a pretty small fraction of your overall audience. And it's like, oh, well, that's good to know because if our natural tendency is to like really give too much to their feedback, then the game starts to skew away from the majority of the audience.
Right.
Um, Now, all of that is not to say that what people say online isn't important to us at all. I don't want to be like telling people on the internet, we're not listening to you, forget it. Like, that's not true at all. Like, our goal is to appeal to everyone, which is why we have modular difficulty and we have
Mhm.
standard one and standard two, right? Because there was a lot of feedback of like, oh, the game is too easy. And you know what the easiest cards are? It's the standard cards because
Yeah.
they don't have boost effects on them for the
Mm.
most part, right? So then we made standard two, and it was like, you want it harder? We can make it harder. That's not a difficult design challenge. And then the feedback was like, not that hard. Like, it was like, well, come on, what do you want? You know? Um, so standard three really wasn't an answer to either of those. Standard three was just like a kind of its own thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, difficulty is one of those things where yeah, I think it's equal parts like math and equal parts like artistry.
Mhm.
You just kind of have to go, how hard should Magneto really be?
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
can mathematically prove he's harder than this character, but that doesn't equal fun, right?
Right.
So it's like you gotta kind of just go for a feeling
Mhm.
at the end of the day.
Perfect. So for you in your process, right? Either designing a hero or a campaign box, kind of what is the most just fun part that you have with it? Is it working on the hero? Is it, building out their cards, or is it the villain side of things and the modular
Mm.
side of things?
The funnest part is definitely right after the vision is approved and we just
Okay.
dive into the design work.
Mhm.
Like that's a very easy question for me to answer. Sometimes I can't always be sure, but in this case, yeah, that's always where the most energy is.
Okay.
Where it's like you've put a lot of thought into this vision and you've had maybe a little back and forth to get it approved. But once it is approved, it's like a horse race. It's like letting the horse out of the gate and just
Mhm.
off they go. And now you're sitting at your computer and you just riffing on ideas and going, okay, now that this is the vision I came up for Winter Soldier, let's actually fill out his card list and go, okay, oh, this sounds fun. Oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's shattered when you actually get it to the table and you're like, ah, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. But um, it's still it's pure creativity. So that's
Mhm.
always the best part.
Is there ever, like, let's say Winter Soldier or whomever, is there ever a time where you come up with, like, let's say 30 ideas, right? 40 ideas, whatever it is, and you're like, man, I need to pare this down a lot. Like, there's just too
Mm.
many ideas.
I know that there's designers who do, right?
Okay.
I know there's definitely designers who just have like what we call a slush folder, where like
Yeah.
your ideas that didn't make it into the final cut, they get slushed over to this place where then you can go back and look like in the future if you ever stuck and you're like, I'm not sure what to do. Let me revisit my slush folder, see
Mhm.
what's in there. My slush folder is pretty small.
Okay.
And I think it's just the way I work. I've worked with some real powerhouse creatives where they're just constantly coming up with
Mhm.
stuff almost like they can't type fast enough to get it all down. Um, and it's almost overwhelming for me to watch. I feel like I'm not the most creative person on the team, but I am very focused. Like once I have a
Mhm.
vision, I feel like I'm very time effective about just getting that vision to the table.
Mhm.
So I know that like one so it's a double-edged sword like any skill, right? Because I've definitely been criticized for being a little formulaic,
Mm.
and I appreciate that. I appreciate that people pay that close attention to my designs that they start to notice patterns and then report them back to me, because I take that then and I go, okay, all right, that's good feedback. Like I want to challenge myself to break out of this one because I didn't know I had it.
Mhm.
Like I just design like me. And so a lot of my designs end up feeling like they were made by Caleb.
Yeah.
So it's good feedback for me to go, all right, check your blind spots you weren't aware of. Let's push myself to break out of that. So like, one of the obvious ways that I could design stuff really fast is I'd be like, well, every hero needs to have a certain amount of attacks, a certain amount of
Mhm.
thwarts, a certain amount of defense, a certain amount of attachment or upgrades versus events and so on and so on. And so one of the ways I can design so quickly is I will sort of like fill out that spreadsheet
Okay.
of all the different card types and quantities, and then I'll just go through and fill in the abilities,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very quick way to get stuff done, but it is a bit formulaic.
Mm.
So I'm like, all right, all right. So I try to challenge myself to go, maybe this character doesn't have defense events. What do they do without defense events?
Mhm.
Stuff like that. Or maybe like one of the ones I'm really proud of is Bishop, as an example.
Mhm.
I think Bishop works real different that his defense doesn't stop the damage. It
Right.
just caps the damage,
Yeah.
right? So and that fits his ability then to like draw, the resource cards for taking the damage. So little things like that I try to push. So no, I don't. I've never had to like pare down from like too many ideas.
Mhm.
I've always just been a little more laser focused about achieving the vision as quickly as possible.
So is it easier then to design the heroes than the villains? Because a lot of the villains feel really unique in the way that they work, right?
Mm,
And different things that they do. Versus, with your heroes, you're getting your 15 cards roughly ish most of the time. So is it a little more time consuming then to do the villains?
that's a great question. I especially like that you brought up the card count as a factor
Mhm.
because you're right. Knowing that every hero has exactly the same amount of cards, typically, um, it's easy to sort of color between the lines with
Right.
heroes. But yeah, villains don't have a fixed number. It doesn't have to be always 15 or
Mhm.
10 or whatever. It's whatever that villain really needs. And so yeah, that presents its own challenge.
Mhm.
On the flip side though, it's like, pardon me, I don't think people compare villain to villain the way they compare hero to hero.
Okay.
So I feel like more thought goes into a lot of the heroes and a lot
Mm.
of the player cards, especially the aspect cards, because they go into the pool.
Right.
And now they're part of it forever. Whereas each villain's kind of its own thing,
Mhm.
right? And if this villain's a little bit like that one, it's probably not as big a deal.
Right, right.
Because I feel like by now everyone kind of agrees if you're buying Marvel Champions, you're buying it first of all for the heroes.
Yeah,
The villains are kind of there because you need something for your hero to do.
yeah.
But that said, we really do try to make each villain feel unique the same way we try to do with each hero.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, they're a unique challenge for sure. And I think at the end of the day, again, the vision's what guides us because we also pitch the scenarios in there
Okay.
and we say these are the villains and these are their hooks the same way we
Mm.
do with the heroes we also pitch the villains um because again we don't want to assume that you're just going to buy it as a customer.
Right.
We want to give you something compelling that you're like, the reason I want to play these scenarios is because they're unlike all the other scenarios I already have. There'll be some commonalities, like, oh, it's another multi-billion scenario, right? Or it's another scenario, a villain with like he's placing counters and doing something. But it should be a multi-billion scenario done in a new and fresh way.
Mhm.
Like, what am I thinking of here? The like Marauders versus the Four Horsemen. Those are both multi-villain scenarios, or the Sinister Six, but
Yeah.
three completely different approaches, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, they each present unique challenges. I would say overall, though, the villains, I was never as stressed.
Okay.
Like, yeah,
That's good.
I maybe just because people, I don't think they brought as much expectation to them.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense, 100%. All right, so we talked about your favorite part of doing things. Now I gotta
Hmm.
talk about your least favorite part of doing things. What's one thing? Maybe you don't dread it or hate it or anything like that, but you're just like, man, it just takes so much,
Uh,
mental,
yes.
focus on this or whatnot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is like the proofreading, editing, like review
Yeah.
stuff. It's so important.
Mm.
I would never ever say like this is beneath me or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like it is vital. But I am bad at it because my like a lot of people who are creative and have that mind that wants to come up with stuff, those kind of processes, my brain starts to wander as
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just reading line by line. I mean, this is the step we do. You just read everything line by line, and you're looking for typos and you're looking for language that is not consistent with previous similar effects. And the problem is my brain autofills. I've
Yeah.
looked at these abilities so much that I'm not actually reading the words anymore. I'm like, oh, that guy when he enters play, he lets you scribe top five for this. I'm not even using the game language in the way I summarize. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing I'm part of a team
Yeah.
because if it was just Caleb making these sets, there would be so many typos and so many different ways of saying the same thing. And oh gosh, and there kind of is still to a little, and that's on me, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but yeah, thank goodness I'm part of a team with people like Molly and Tony. And when Boggs was doing it, like these are like super professional when it comes to these review steps. Like they really get into it in the best possible way. And then we hire freelance
Mhm.
proofreaders and editors and people we've worked with for years and built relationship, and they're credited in the various rule books, and they earn those credits because
Yeah.
they catch a lot and they really help us out.
Well, and two, like, I mean, this game has gotten massive at this point, just like card pool wise. So now you
Hmm.
got to check even more content constantly.
Hmm.
So I imagine it just gets a bigger and bigger headache the longer it goes.
Yeah, there's a point at which I kind of have to release it and say I just don't even have time in this whole development window to check this against everything that's out there. I can't. That's it's
Yeah.
impossible. Um, and that's where I really trust our playtesters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but our playtest process really evolved too. Because like when I again 14 years at the studio, I've seen a lot of growth and a lot of change. And when I started, our playtest process was really built around like a board game development
Mm.
model, where you're always recruiting new people
Okay.
to come in and learn this new game. And then at the end, it's kind of like here's your credits, thank you,
Yeah.
right? And then when it's another new game, you hire another new team, and they might be recurring people, there might not be. We kind of did that for years on like Lord of the Rings, and then it got to a point where I was like, this is getting a bit exhausting to like constantly recruit new people and catch them on. Now, thankfully, we had a group that kept coming back again and again. But the biggest difference there between like a living card game and a board game is that the living card game, we are constantly making new product.
Yeah.
There's never a day of the year where we're not working on something new. Whereas board games, there's natural lulls between
Hmm.
where they're coming up with an entirely new game, and so there's nothing in development. And so I was actually the one to pitch and say, could we get a special group of playtesters who are like always on call, right?
Okay.
They're not contracted by product, instead they're contracted by quarter.
Mm.
And so yeah, this and I threw the idea out there. Other people jumped in, shared their input, and as a team, we came up with this what called line tester program,
Hmm.
where each line that necessitates this, each line has its group of line testers
Hmm.
who are they're contracted, I think, for 3 months at a time. Most of them choose to stay like year after year. It's actually become almost like a coveted position
Yeah.
within the playtester group, because your line testers are like the people you rely on the most. They're people you've built relationship with over years, and you really value their insight. And then you also have still with the line test, you still have the alpha testers
Okay.
who are coming in product by product. Um, and it was great to realize that we needed both, and both play a very important role. Um, so yeah, we really count on our play testers and especially our line testers to think about the things you were talking about as the card pool continues to grow.
Yeah.
The line testers are the experts on that card pool. They're
Mhm.
the ones who are so passionate about the game that they're constantly deck building, and they're looking for new combos every time there's an announcement article with like, look at this new card, and they see like immediately a dozen different ways they could use that. I don't have time for that
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm so busy working on the pre-constructed decks. Like
Mhm.
I have just enough time to design the set, the scenarios, the mod sets, all of it, and then in playtesting, I'm getting feedback going, yeah, how did the Cyclops precon feel against the Sentinel scenario? And um, so I didn't even have time to like build custom decks. That was like, all
Yeah.
right, line testers, this is what you love doing. You tell me what's busted.
I was gonna say, then do you hear some feedback when people take like Star Lord or somebody like that could do like 60 damage in a turn and
Mhm.
crazy? And you're like, wait, really? Like that's
Oh,
not.
absolutely, absolutely. You'll get these reports that are like, so here's what I did with this character, and you're like, that sounds totally busted. Like, how did you do that? Like, walk me through, please, like step by step. And they're happy to do it. And they'll be,
Yeah.
okay, that took a lot of steps. It doesn't sound like every game you can do. And then it's like at the end of it, you're like, okay, great. How did it feel? They're like, that felt great.
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
cool.
well, at the end of the day, that's what's important. It's like, and then, but then as a designer, you have to like project like a year ahead and go, will it still feel great
Mm,
by like the 20th time you've done it? You
yeah.
know, because that's where there's a gut check of like, no, I'm pretty sure that start to feel like I'm trivializing the game.
Mhm.
Like, well, we don't want that. So what do we need to do to fix that?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're coming to the end of your time at Marvel Champions. I'm very sad about it, but hopefully you're doing
I
bigger and better
appreciate the
things. Yeah.
sentiment.
um, so talk a bit about kind of wrapping this up, right? And finishing. Now that you're coming out with Civil War, which is going to be pretty much unlike anything else we've really seen from
Mhm.
Marvel Champions. How cool was it, I guess, first to just be able to do something that Marvel Champions, I mean, people have been asking for PvP stuff since the beginning of the game. And now you've finally been able to say, like, all right, here you go. Here it is. Have fun.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because yes, people were asking about it from the beginning. Like I remember announcing Marvel Champions at Gen Con
Mhm.
way back when, and immediately there was like two or three points of feedback. Like the first one was, I want the X-Men. I just remember that was like over and over. There was the loudest chorus was, we want the X-Men. Um, and then it was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they did Civil War?
Mm,
You know, and I think here it's like both from a mechanical and a thematic point of view, like equally.
mhm,
People are like, I'd love them to find a way that I can test my hero against your hero. And I also love the Civil War storyline where the heroes were divided, and especially after they made the movie. right? And it became so popularized
Yeah.
because comic book fans will know what a big deal the Civil War storyline was when it came out, on the newsstands. But then the movie kind of just blew the gates open to the whole world. So
Yeah.
everyone's familiar with the story. Everybody wants to see Captain America versus Iron Man. And then you've got that group of people that are like, yeah, I kind of want to play that out too. So it was something we were thinking about from the very beginning, like before the game was even approved.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and so like that was something that like Nate stepped off the game very early after like the core set because as I said, he was our executive game designer at the time. So he had a lot of other work to do. So it became Michael Boggs and I who led the game after that. And so we were the ones to initially like really talk about it. I remember Nate kind of chiming and going, "Can you guys make this work? What would it look like?"
Mm.
And I remember Boggs put together a list, like a document of why you can't just do hero versus hero.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that's just an impossibility. You can't literally play my hero against your hero. And he brought up just like kind of basic things like all of their cards say like deal damage to the villain or to a minion,
Hmm.
right? To an enemy. Like nothing deals damage to enemy heroes, like or your opponent. And then talked about balance issues, obvious things like this character's got 14 hit points. This one has 8, like
Well, Hulk was
that,
going to be the strongest hero in that, right? Just Hulk smash
yeah,
everyone. It's like, all right, game over. I won. Good job.
exactly. Like it takes literally twice as many hits to defeat him as it does like your average hero. So absolutely, we put together that whole presentation basically said, here's why the only way to do Civil War PvP style in this game is to make it I create a scenario and I team up with my leader depending which side of the debate I'm on, and then I go up against your leader,
Hmm.
and your hero goes up against my leader.
Yeah.
Um, and once we settled on that, like the ideas just flowed very naturally.
Okay. All right. And now comparing this to, when you finish Lord of the Rings. I remember listening to a podcast or a video when you finished Lord of the Rings and you're like, we did everything we could. Right? We're done here. It's over. Like there's really nothing else to do. How does it compare to Marvel Champions? Is there anything else that you would have wished you would have done? Or are you just like,
Mm.
no, I did what I did and I'm really happy with it and it's in good hands now type of thing?
I like that question. Sort of subtly asking if I left because there's nothing left to do. There is so much left to do with Marvel
Hmm.
Champions. It is a little bit of apples to oranges,
Okay.
the Lord of the Rings and the Marvel Champions comparison. Both fruit, both LCGs. But with Lord of the Rings, I kept a map of Middle Earth at my desk, and we would kind of like, point to all the places we'd been to on the
Mm.
map. And by the time we pitched the last cycle, the Vengeance of Mordor, and we're going to Mordor in the game now. I mean that you can't say the game is over any more than like we're going to
Yeah.
Mordor. It's because we'd gone everywhere else that we basically had the rights to go.
Yeah.
That we had a couple ideas that we had pitched that were sort of gently um, denied because they're like, look, you're starting to venture outside of our license at that point.
Okay.
Um, and so it was sort of like, okay, well, within the bounds of what we are confident we have access to, we feel really good about what we've done. And it was also sort of fortuitous that I was pitching that at the same time we were pitching Marvel Champions,
Okay.
right? So it was like Marvel Champions is coming and it's going to
Mm.
be a juggernaut because Marvel's the hottest property in the world at this time and maybe still. Um, and so it was like, I mean, the sales aren't even close. Lord of the Rings was a big hit for FFG, at its time,
Yeah.
right? And then Netrunner blew that away, or X-Wing. These games, quadrupled, Lord of the Rings sales,
Mhm.
and now Marvel Champions has quadrupled like those sales.
Yeah.
As far as like Netrunner did great for us, Marvel's done way more. So is Arkham now,
Mhm.
um, and so when you're looking at, well, we're paying this designer the same amount of money as this designer. This is our return over here. You know what I mean?
Yep,
It's
yep,
like, well, time to wrap this up
yep.
and move them over here. And so it was just like everything aligned.
Mhm.
Like I really felt as a designer, I had given my best to everything I could do for Lord of the Rings, and really felt like there wasn't anything left that I was like, no, no, no. If we end now, it'll be a mistake. It was really,
Right.
I was the one when I pitched the Vengeance of Mordor to say, I think now's a good time to sunset this line and say we did everything we wanted to do, and really feel good about. I mean, what an accomplishment in the world of card games to say that game ran over a decade,
Yeah.
and it didn't like just get cut off at some point.
Hmm.
Like so few card games are able to do that. So that's I feel that's a real testament to the game that Nate French crafted and the support that it got from the studio. Um, and then it got me excited for like, wow, sky's the limit with Marvel, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, there I kind of had a bucket list of things I wanted to do personally when I started the game, and they said, "Hey, Caleb, come up with your initial like 5-year line plan, something like that." Just not to say this is what we will do, but this is kind of like give us a roadmap where you'd like to go.
Right.
And there were changes along the way, like any good road trip, you make some detours. But essentially, I got to check every one of those things off. But by the time we're done, I think fans have already pointed out there's a lot of stuff still needs to be done,
Hmm.
right? Some very prominent heroes and villains that are just now getting their MCU debuts, right? Like those need to be done, and I can't speak to unannounced products, but there's a good chance, you know what I mean? Would we suddenly just abandon, the popularity of the MCU and walk away? Like that'd be kind of silly. So there's a good chance, and especially now because I know the guys on the team, and I know the whole thought process behind why they chose to staff up,
Hmm.
right? Like when I worked on the line, it was primarily me and one other person. At first, it was
Right.
Michael Boggs, then it's Tony Fanchi. Now it's Tony, Frank, and Aaron, right?
Hmm.
So I think people can rest assured that there's lots more great stuff to come. So
Wink,
not
wink,
not like
nudge,
Lord of the
nudge,
Rings,
everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
not like Lord of the Rings in that at all. No one should be, prophesying doom and gloom, saying, "Oh,
Mm.
Caleb left because it's a sinking ship or some nonsense." It's like, no, 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 no. My hope, my genuine hope, is in 5 years it'll be like, "Hey guys, remember when we were all concerned about Caleb stepping away? Isn't it amazing to look back and realize that's when the game really blew up and like
Yeah.
really, I entered a whole new, realm of popularity." I wish those guys nothing but success because
Mm.
they deserve it and they're working hard behind the scenes. They're working hard to get it.
Yeah. I have to say, because I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings too. I love the game, and we're playing it now through the channel. And the Nightmare decks, which by the way, some of those are just insane. But we're playing through it, and I always loved how you finished the entire series with the contract cards because it just like opened up this design of just like, oh, like the sky is the true limit with this game right now. Like it's gonna get nuts.
I really appreciate you saying that because again, we don't get a ton of feedback from outside, like the podcasters and the
Mhm.
people on the internet, and those tend to be the people in the online spaces. They really tend to be the people who are so excited about the game that that's where your homebrew communities start.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I did that last set, I did it for exactly the reason you just said. I created contracts because I said this will be my parting gift to the
Mm.
community is you think you understand deck building to this point. Everything's been very tribal with a few gimmicks like secrecy and other things that would encourage you to go a slightly different route.
Hmm.
I said, but I'm going to introduce contracts as a way to revolutionize deck building and to give you endless possibilities
Hmm.
for you could build this same contract 100 different ways. And I was really looking forward to people kind of getting into that and posting about, oh my gosh, what decks have you made? But it was like before those were even out, then there was like community announcements of like, hey, we've got this fan made set that's coming out. It's and I just felt like I got almost overshadowed immediately. And I was like, well, I have mixed reactions because on one hand, I'm glad for the people who are so excited about the game that they're making this fan driven stuff and they're really keeping it going, which I'm sure in some, not insignificant way helps drive sales continually.
Sure. Yeah.
So, that's a big plus.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was this little broken part inside of me though that was like, couldn't you give me like 1 year?
Yeah.
Just
Right.
like,
Just give us
let them explore my stuff for like a year. But
a.
no, I mean, I know those guys personally and I love them all. They're good friends of mine. So I was happy for them. And yeah, they found a lot of popularity with that.
I know it's been great with the re-release stuff because I have all the older stuff, and now people on my channel are slowly getting introduced to it, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is great!" I was like, "Yeah, start getting the re-release stuff. Like it's packaged nicer, it's easier to get instead of
Hmm.
collecting all those little packs that we had to." So, I will say they all want the other cycles too. Just throwing it out there, just saying.
Yeah. Well, if it were up to me.
Uh,
But here's
t-
the thing, at the end of the day, I have watched you show enough to know that you're pretty practical minded.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I feel like, you know, you kinda get in the sense of like, "Look, we're not gonna walk away from money and leave it on the table." Like, if the money's there, we do it, and I think the unfortunate reality is that there are people who really would love to get the, like, Vengeance of Mordor set,
Sure,
like,
yeah.
repackaged, and I would too, because I got friends who, like, just missed it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't have enough extra copies to hook them up, you know what I mean? Like, I got mine, and that's kinda it. So on one hand, I totally get it, I would love it, but
Yeah.
I just feel like, you
Business
know,
is
the
business kind of thing.
business, yeah, and again, and it's not even a matter of like, "Oh, but you could make money." It's, yeah, but the person who has to take the time to put that together
Yeah.
could be doing something else that makes probably way more still.
Yeah.
That's the part I think often gets overlooked, is like, we're not all just sitting on bucket loads of spare time, you know?
No, that's fair. All right. All right. So let's switch gears just a little bit for a bit to Star Wars Deck Builder.
Sure.
So let's talk about kind of, I guess, how this started because okay, I might be crazy, but I swear when this was first announced, it was kind of announced as like, hey, we're doing this one thing and that's it. And
Mhm.
now you're coming out with all these expansions, which is phenomenal, not complaining. But like,
Thank you.
was the original idea just like a one box thing and that's it? Or was it always kind of like, no, there could be more if they'll let me do more type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I mean, to both. It
Yeah.
really was, like I said, I came to it as a passion project, and
Mhm.
I worked very closely with Nate, who was a huge supporter, huge champion. Beyond giving me the opportunity, he was also, you know, in the leader meetings, kinda greasing the wheels just by saying, "Look, I think he's really onto something. It's definitely worth checking out."
Mhm.
And I think he and I both kinda knew, though, that a a one-off product is a lot easier to pitch than a commitment to a whole line.
Okay.
That's a huge difference in the eyes of leadership, especially at that time. Was like, are we committing to this one box, this one thing that we can very much see the beginning, middle, and end of that process? Or are we committing to something ongoing and now we have to, do we have to staff up? I mean, now are we
Yeah.
talking about hiring someone new? Because that's a real commitment. And so that pitch meeting, when we finally got it before the studio head,
Mm.
to have him play it for the first time and consider actually making the game. We'd had a lot of preliminary meetings. Pretty much everyone else in that meeting had already played the game and said they loved it, and so it was all kind of building to this point. And I remember that he really liked the game, even
Mhm.
though he had that kind of bad luck experience where like his faction didn't turn up as much.
Yeah.
He still won the game. He just leaned
Mm.
hard into neutral and just because he's a gamer at the end of the day, studio head, he's still a gamer.
Yeah.
Um, And I remember watching him play and going, "A rebel card has to come up," you know, like, just mathematically, you know, because like, there is a bell-shaped curve to the game where most games will be pretty balanced, but you have either end of where, like, one faction or the other is just underrepresented in the row. It's just the nature of a game with that much variability. And so I was like, of all the luck, it's gonna be the one time I get to pitch the game where he's at one extreme end.
Mhm.
And again, I've been playing the game for 2 years at this point.
Mhm.
I'd logged enough games to have a very keen understanding of this bell-shaped curve. Um, and so my heart's kinda sinking like, "Oh, no, he's gonna hate it," you know, like, or maybe he'll be at the end like, "Well, I could see the promise, you know, maybe it could
There's a
use
lot of
some
work
work."
to do. Yeah.
And instead, I just remember the first thing he said after the game ended was like, "Yeah, it's too bad we can't have it ready by, you know, whatever time it was." You know, it was
Yeah.
like, you know, 9 months from now. He's like, "Yeah, it's too bad we can't have it ready and then because it would really fit nice in that." And it was like my brain catching up going, "Oh, he really likes it." He's like talking about doing it. And so they started rapping around the table, like the different leaders in the team go, "What do you think? You know, kind of what do you think?" And like I said, everybody else there was already kind of a fan of the game and very supportive.
Mhm.
So at one point I realized, you know, they're just talking numbers game. They're talking how long would it take? How many people do we need involved? And that's when I kind of shot my shot and answered your question of like, why was it just one thing and not the whole line? Is because he was really like, yeah, you know, it's not just the designer though, right? It's like art, right? Like our art team is really busy.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, well, you know, to kind of raise my hand. You're like, hey, you know, you guys know the schedule. I don't, but maybe this is helpful. Like, you don't have to order any art. Like every card that you just looked at, every card title, I've already made sure that there's a beautiful piece of art that can go with it based
Mhm.
on all the previous Star Wars games we've done. And I
Yeah.
just remember his reaction that moment was like, "Oh,
Okay.
oh, what do we need then? Like a cover, like some graphic design?" Like, and that was kind of it. That kind of like sealed it. And so we were very strategic. I felt like, if you got just one shot,
Mhm.
you know, uh, have like, know what you're aiming for. I was not aiming for a commitment to a line.
Right.
I thought if I could just, like, at this point, like I said, I've been playing for a couple of years. I just want to see it on the store shelves. I just want to see real art, real graphic design, and just know I got it from, inception to the finish line. Um, but from there, it was like once we decided to do it, we the support just started pouring in. It was
Okay.
really amazing. Like our current studio head Jim, in his role at the time, it was his responsibility to go and pitch the game then to Disney.
Okay.
So he put together this whole slideshow, including a couple slides about like what is a deck building game, right?
Mhm.
And as he's pitching, it was like his normal context there, and so is like another person like higher up, and they're a big fan of deck building games.
Oh.
So it's like those slides weren't even necessary, and the first response was like, "Hey, this looks great. You know what I like about deck building games? They usually have expansions. Like, could we get expansions?" And then they go on this like promotional tour. I remember because like the head of my vertical now is Caitlin, and she's wonderful. And in her role at the time, she was the one going around like on this European tour, just like pitching to all of our partners. And she and Jim come back and they're like, everyone says the same thing. They want expansions. And I was like, well, I don't mind. I might
Yeah.
have some designed already because
Who
my kids
knows?
got to go to bed every night and it takes them a while. So it was really fun to see how that just kind of happened naturally. But it took a while after that because I was still on Marvel Champions for over a year
Yeah.
um, before it finally worked out that they're like, okay, I think we're gonna find you an off road and get you onto Star Wars.
So what's the biggest challenge as far as making this deck builder compared to other ones? Like, because like you said, it plays a lot different. It works a lot different. It's head to head. What were some of the personal challenges that you had
Mm.
to kind of overcome for this?
I'll say two things, and I'll try
Mm.
to keep track so I don't get lost in my meandering again. The first one was just knowing what I wanted to be and kind of staying true to that.
Mhm.
Um, because even with all the support I got, people always really liked it. Everybody, as they get excited, goes, "Oh, and you could do this," or "Have you thought about that?" And
Mm.
it's all very well intended. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
sometimes it is something that goes, "Oh, the game would work better that way."
Mhm.
But other times it's like at one point someone suggested, "Hey, you've got these TIE bombers and these Y wings. Like, wouldn't it be neat if there was a separate deck of like bomb cards and you could shuffle them in?" I'm like, "That is a cool idea. That's very evocative, and I like when deck builders do that." I said, "But the problem is that's another set of rules I have to write. That's another
Yeah.
deck that people need to know where to put it on the table. They need to understand where it works. Where does the bomb go when I reveal it? Does it go to my discard pile? Does it go over here? Like that's another page or two in the rule book. It's another card diagram, another card type. All of this stuff that I'm kind of like trying to defend my vision of. I
Sure. Yeah.
want people to be able to pick this game up and learn it and start playing like in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And every little piece that I add just makes it harder.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a challenge, but I don't want to make it sound like I did some heroic, like I fought people off. People were so generous and understanding, and they'd be like, "Have you thought about that?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, here's why I don't want to do it." And they'd be like, "Yeah, okay." You know what I mean? It wasn't like a battle or anything. It was just realizing how easy it is
Mhm.
to get caught up in that excitement, and suddenly your game's way heavier than you
Yeah.
meant it to be. So that was the first challenge, and then the second one, it's maybe not very exciting, but it's kind of personal to me, and that is coming up with product types
Mm.
because I've only ever worked on living card games, you know,
Yeah.
and that's very structured, you
Mhm.
know, big core box, medium size, expansion boxes, and then hero packs or scenario packs, right? And that was all kind of decided ahead of time. I mean, when we did champions, we did get to decide, hey, these medium boxes won't be like Lord of the Rings or Arkham. They're going to be more about the scenarios, and
Okay.
our hero packs won't be mixed the way Lord of the Rings and Arkham is. They'll be more about the heroes, but we're still working within an established like price point, card count. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with Star Wars the deck building game, this is a whole new line.
Mhm.
And it's mostly like my creation. So it's people are kind of looking to me like, all right, what else you got? Like and in truth though, it was again, I think the passion project sort of foundation of this game takes everything that might have been scary and turns it into excitement for me
Yeah.
because like we just announced the Mandalorian faction pack.
Mhm.
And this is something I'm really proud of and very excited for. And it honestly just came out of like me watching the Mandalorian TV show while I'm waiting for my kids to fall asleep, and then
Yeah.
going, "Hey, I wonder if I could make a Mandalorian faction.
Mhm.
What would that look like?" And then I kind of came up with it, and then showed it to Nate. Nate was like, "This looks pretty cool. Now that you have a sort of a third faction, can you play 3 player?" And going, "That sounds cool. Let me get back to you on that." And then coming up with how would that work, and at the end of the day, going, "Well, this won't fit the way I originally thought it would. I'm going to do something bigger. I have to come with this many cards, and
Mhm.
we'll call it a faction pack." You
Mhm.
know, so it's a very, I guess you call it grassroots, kind of ground up approach to products. So it's a little challenging in that I didn't have to do that previously,
Okay.
but I would say it's more exciting than
Yeah.
anything. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too that you bring up the whole like 5-minute rule thing because the when that game first came out, Nelson all over was like, "Hey, come stream, the game with me on the channel because we're both solo streamers and we want to play it." And he's like, "Just read the rules before we start." I was like, "Okay," and then I completely forgot. So like we're live on his stream. I'm like, "Let's just say that your audience doesn't know how to play at all. Well, what would you tell them?" And so he explains, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, okay, I can get this." And once we went through, I was like, "This is great! Like it's so easy to pick up and whatever." And then then I have my wife on the channel, and she comes in and she's like, "Ah, I don't want to learn another game." I was like, "No, trust me, this is really straight to the point. You're gonna get it because you like card games." And once we got into it, she's like, "This is great! Like this is snappy. This is to the point. I love this."
I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that. That is, it's been very rewarding to hear people in their reviews of the game and the things that they like about it. They're essentially going through my pitch
Mhm.
as far as the things that they call out that they like the easy to learn, quick to set up and play. Like that was all in the vision.
Yeah.
Like that was like, here's why Fantasy Flight Games should do this game because it's not like our other games where
Mhm.
we're known for these epic, crunchy, it might take you a while to set up, but you're gonna have a great time
Right.
really losing yourself in this game. Like I'm a big fan of Twilight Imperium. And that game takes like an hour to
It's
set
so
up,
long.
And like, but I love it, right? So I'm not getting down on any of that. I just thought here's a chance for us to say as a studio, we know how to do these other games too.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful entry point for people to come and discover Fantasy Flight Games who might be intimidated by Twilight Imperium, or some people are even intimidated by Marvel Champions.
Mhm.
As presentable and accessible as we tried to make it, it's still at some point a lot of different card types, a lot of different moving pieces. And for someone who's more casual, they can build up confidence
Yeah.
playing the deck builder that they go, you know what, I think I want to do try on that Marvel Champions, or Arkham Horror, whatever it is, take that next step.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm always happy to hear people say that, yeah, it was so easy to pick up.
So as far as design this game, was there anything that you learned from Marvel Champions to help influence the Star Wars deck builder game? Or I don't know if when you
Yes.
first did the Star Wars stuff, you were still working on Marvel. So was there
Hmm.
anything that helped vice versa as well?
Oh, interesting.
Mm.
I don't know how much working on the deck builder, because you're right, there was some overlap there.
Yeah.
I don't know how much work on the deck builder like fed back into
Okay.
champions. I'd be curious to dwell on this more, but I'm not gonna hold you here while I do that. But definitely Marvel Champions led into Star
Okay.
Wars deck, and I've talked about this in other places where like Lord of the Rings, I've always said is like learning to ride a bike.
Hmm.
I think the mechanics, once you understand them, feel very natural.
Hmm.
They serve the story and they draw you into the world in a very rewarding and immersive way. But at first blush, you're like encounters, treachery, scenarios, heroes. Like there's so much to take in. It can be a little overwhelming. But so it's like once you find your balance, like learn to ride a bike. Once you find your balance, you're like, oh,
Hmm.
this feels good. Now
Yeah.
I can really, now I'm jumping stuff in the street and going off road and having a great time. Um, but like I mentioned kind of at the start of the interview, like Marvel Champions, we wanted to bring it down, make it more
Yeah.
accessible. a game not for kids, but a game you can play with the kids, no problem. And I think Star Wars, the Deck Builder, is like a continuation of that journey for me of like complicated to less complicated to like how easy can I make a game to pick up and play, but still give you something you can sink your teeth into. Because
Yeah.
I'm a very like strategic. The word advanced comes to mind, but it sounds like I'm bragging too much. But I don't. I played CCGs at the world championship level. I don't think it's a brag to say I'm an advanced card
Yeah.
gamer. Um, and so I want the combos. I want the synergies. I'm attracted to the Lord of the Rings and the Arkham horrors with all the complexity. But I get frustrated as as a dad in his 40s. Like it's who am I teaching to play those games at this
Yeah.
point? Who's got the time? If they don't already know how to play these games, how much am I going to enjoy trying to teach them? And then it's such a big commitment too to be like, okay, for you to make your own deck, you got to buy all this stuff. Deck builders just appeal to me at this stage of my life where I'm getting still that rewarding gameplay,
Hmm.
but I'm not asking anything of my partner in return. It's like, here, I already have the game.
Yeah.
If you just want to sit and play with me, and that's part of the reason that the deck is 90 cards and like I mentioned that bell-shaped curve, there's that randomness because I also wanted my opponent to have a chance to win.
Yeah.
If I'm playing something like Magic the Gathering or Star Trek the card game is what I played, any of these like high level competitive games, and I'm introducing someone for the first time, they have no chance of beating me.
Right. Yeah.
Unless I fall asleep halfway through the game, I know the whole card pool. I've memorized. You play a card, I can already read it for you without
Yeah.
looking at it. Like we're not the same at that time. Give you a couple years, yeah, you might
Yeah.
beat me. But with a deck builder, I wanted to make it to be like I'm probably gonna win,
Hmm.
but there is a real shot. Like I sit down to play with my 11-year-old, there's a real shot that if he plays smart and the cards just favor him a little bit, he could beat me. And
Yeah.
I just think that's important for
Hmm.
a game like this.
It's interesting when you bring up too that the Lord of the Rings was more advanced and Marvel, let's just say, is a step below as far as how complicated it might be. But it's fascinating because a lot of my audience, first started Marvel Champions, and they're like, "Okay, now I see you playing Lord of the Rings. Like, how hard is it?" I'm like, once you understand action windows, I feel like it's smooth sailing. Like, you'll
Hmm.
get it. It's just change your mindset, but you'll get there. And it's really kind of interesting. Like, they are very different games, obviously, but like once you feel like you kind of get one, you can transition to another pretty easily.
Hmm. Well, one of the advantages of Lord of the Rings is you always know who you is.
Yeah. That does help.
You're never quite looking at a card going, but who are you? Um,
Mhm.
I'm glad I could laugh about that now. We were like so like, oh, it's not as obvious to people as we hoped.
Yeah, some good times with you and
Yeah,
whatnot, but at least it's a fun joke now, so
yeah,
you'll always have that. So,
indeed.
what I will say though, as a solo player, if Star Wars Deck Builder can come up with solo, that'd be really cool. Just saying, but
I agree, but consider the challenges there. Like that is because that comes up a lot. Again, that's another one of those things where we did a live stream
mm,
earlier this week for the Mandalorian, and
mm,
so many comments about this game needs solo. Give us a solo mode, and it's like, well, I also love solo games. That was what
yeah,
drew me to Lord of the Rings. That was a key component of Marvel Champions. And so I think about it, and then I think, okay, but like the Rebels' whole strategy is discarding cards from my opponent's hand. Not their whole strategy, but it's a big chunk of it, right?
yeah,
It's like, how do you do that? Okay, and then, but even deeper than that, the crux of the game, for me at least, is the choice of am I attacking your base, which is my win condition,
mhm,
or am I attacking this card in the row to deny you access to that card and get a
right,
reward that might propel me to buy a better card? Pardon me. Um, and that's fine for me playing solo, but who's simulating that on my opponent's side?
yeah.
And I think that's where it gets real tricky. So that's an interesting idea, very tough nut to crack.
You're the smartest game designer I know. I know you could do it if you.
Ah. You don't know a lot of game designers, I think.
Yeah, we won't say how many, but that's fine.
I mean, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I have a lot of things I want to do with this game that I'm really excited and given time, hopefully we get to all of them.
Yeah, it's awesome because I know with the announcement, in one of the articles, it was stating, that this is going to be around for a while and you got a lot to do. So, I know for me personally and my community, I mean, we're excited. We're excited to see where it goes. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right, Caleb. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me to me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.